This video is about finding the area of triangles. Alright, so if we open this up, we talked about area earlier, about how it's the number of square units it takes to cover something in a parallelogram, and it's the same as the area of a triangle. You're still trying to figure out the number of square units to cover the triangle. Now, before, the area of the parallelogram was base times height, but the area of a triangle is a little different, which is why it's important to know what you're finding the area of. It's always going to determine what formula you use. So don't just assume that it's base times height. So it says here that the area A of a triangle is 1/2, or half the product of any base, B, and its height, H. So the formula looks like this. A equals 1/2 base times height, or you could write it as area equals base times height over 2. Because taking half of something is the same thing as dividing it by 2. And remember, writing it like a fraction is just another way to say divide it by 2. If we look at what they're talking about in a triangle, the base is this part down here at the bottom. The height is how tall the triangle is. And remember, just like in the parallelogram, the height and the base have to form this right angle. So when you're trying to determine the height and base in a triangle, you need to look for that right angle. That's going to help you figure out what it is. Now, it's different, right, than the area formula for a parallelogram, but a lot of people forget the 1/2. And so, we're going to talk more about where this formula comes from, but I just wanted to show you really quick because maybe it'll help you remember why it's not base times height like the rectangle. So if I took a rectangle like this, I know that the base times height is the formula for a parallelogram. Well, if I want to make this into a triangle, I would cut down the diagonal like this. And so I would see that a parallelogram is really 2 triangles. So the area of this parallelogram right now is base times height. But if I wanted to know the area of the triangle, or just one of the triangles, I would have to take this away, which would be half of my parallelogram. All right, so that's kind of where that formula comes from. It's half the base times the height. So you use it, you apply it the same way you applied the formula for parallelograms. So let's go ahead and try that. In this picture right here, before we can use a formula, we need to know the measure of the base. So we're going to count the number of squares across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the base is 5 units. And then this is making a right angle here, so I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 units for the height. I'm going to write down my formula every time. It's just safer that way. It's 1/2 base times height. Typically, you're going to see it written as 1/2 and not as a fraction over 2. I believe on your star chart, this is the way they'll give it to you. So again, it's not something you have to memorize, but it is something you have to remember to look at. Don't just guess the formula. So now we're going to replace the base with 5. So A is going to equal 1/2. B is 5 now, and H is 8. And we have a couple of options here. We could try to take half of 5, or we could multiply 5 times 8 first and then take half of that. That's simpler in this case, so I'm going to multiply 5 times 8 is 40, and then I still need to take 1/2 of 40. All right, really what I'm doing is I'm dividing 40 by 2, so if you're not sure what that is, you can divide. And bring down your 0, so that would be 20. So my area is 20 square units. It's still area, so I'm still going to measure it in square units. Another application of the area formula for a triangle is when you use it to find something other than area. So we can use it, if we know the area, we can use it to find either the base or the height. Still going to write down the formula because that's helping me remember, especially that 1/2 part. Right out here to the side, it tells me the area is 42 meters squared, so I'm going to replace A with 42. I got the 1/2 is always part of the formula, and the base, I can see the base and the height, right, are making that right angle. So this is the base, height is what I'm looking for. The base is 14, the height I don't know. So when you solve a problem like this, you want to go ahead and work out what you can. So I can do half of 14 on this side. Can't do much with 42 yet. So half of 14 is 7. H, which means 7 times 8. This is an equation. We've seen these before. Cut it in half, right? I'm going to isolate my variable, which is right here. So I need to do the inverse of multiplying, or the opposite. So I'm going to divide by 7. And that's going to leave me with 42 divided by 7, which is 6. So the height is 6. And that's going to be measured in meters. So 6 meters. So let's continue to practice this with some exercises at the bottom. I'm going to first write down, I can see that it's a triangle, so 1/2 base times height. I'm going to count at my base here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 5 units across. Height has to be this right angle right here, so I'm going to count from the right angle, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And then I'm going to multiply 5 times 4, that's 20, but then I still need to take half of it or divide it by 2, so 20 divided by 2 is 10. So the area is equal to 10, and then I don't have a measurement here, so what I say is units, and I can say it with the second power because that means squared too. And number 2, it's a triangle, so I know the formula to use is 1/2 base times height. I'm going to plug in my numbers here, the base and the height. I've got my right angle, so base times height here, oops, which was 5, sorry, 1/2, 2 times 5. So normally I could multiply 2 times 5 and then do half of that, but just to show you that there are different ways to do this, multiplication is commutative, and so that really means I can multiply, when I'm multiplying numbers, I can multiply them in any order. So sometimes it makes sense to take half of one of these numbers first. And in this case, this is pretty easy. I know that 2 times 5 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. But another way to do this is to go ahead and take half of 2. What's half of 2? Well, 1. I could do this part first, and then multiply by 5. That would give me 5, and this is in square feet. Okay, that's just one way to do it, or I could do it like I did last time and do 1/2 of 10, which is also 5. Okay, all right, and then this third example, it's also a triangle, 1/2 base times height. I'm looking for the area, so I'm going to do 1/2. The base down here is 14.5. Now, I don't always like to work with fractions, so I'm going to change them to decimals. Sometimes that's easier. So this is 14.5, because hopefully you know by now that 1/2 is 0.5. Then I need to multiply it times the height here, which is making that right angle, 12 3/4. Now, if I've forgotten what 3/4 is, I can always tie bow and figure it out. 5 won't go into 3, add your decimal, add your 0, 5 will go into 30, 7 times, which is 28. When you subtract, you get 2, bring down another 0, 4 will go into 25 times, so 0.75. So I'm going to be multiplying 14.5 times 12.75. All right, so the next step is to multiply 14.5 times 12.75. And I'm going to put the 12.75 on top because I like most of my digits on the top. 5 times 5 is 25, carry your 2. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 2 is 37, carry your 3. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Start with a 0. 4 times 5 is 20, carry a 2. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30, carry your 3. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Start with 2 zeros. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 2 is 2. And 1 times 1 is 1. Add these up. I get 5, 7, 8. 6 plus 7 is 13, plus 1 is 14, carry your 1. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 2 is 8. And bring down the 1. All right, and then I need to make sure I put my decimal in the right place. So I'm going to count out the number of decimal places I had when I was multiplying. So 1, 2, 3 spaces here, 1, 2, 3 over here. So my final answer is area is equal to 184.875. And this is going to be in square inches. All right, so I know it's kind of tiny, not much room. It's all right, but do your best. The last two problems, we're still using the area formula for a triangle, but we're not necessarily solving for area. We're supposed to find the missing dimension. So in this case, the height, or h, is equal to 12, and the area, or a, is equal to 24. So the formula, 1/2 base times height, is still the same, But now I'm replacing A with 24. I'm replacing, well, I can't replace B, that's what I'm looking for. So B is going to stay here, and then the height is 12. All right, so this is one of those times where I cannot multiply 1/2 times B. I don't know what B is, but I could do 1/2 of 12. That I know how to do. 1/2 of 12 is 6. So I'm going to rewrite this as 24 equals 6 times B. And then this is an equation, cut it in half. Isolate your variable. That would be right here. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying by 6. I'm going to divide by 6. So B is going to equal 24 divided by 6, which is 4. All right, and then I want to go back and make sure I have units here. So the base is equal to 4 inches. And the last example, kind of similar, base is 15. This is area, 37.5. My formula is still a triangle. I'm going to replace A with 37.5. The 1/2 is always part of the formula for a triangle. Base is going to be replaced with 15. Height is what I'm looking for. So again, I'm going to start with what I can do. I can do 1/2 of 15, and maybe not easily, but I can work it out on this side. So I'm going to divide 2 into 15. 2 will go into 15 7 times. When I subtract, I get 1. Add a decimal, bring it up, add a 0, bring it down. 2 will go into 10 5 times. So 1/2 of 15 is 7.5. So now I have this equation, 37.5 equals 7.5 times h. It's an equation. I know how to solve that. I'm going to isolate my variable after I cut it in half. This is being multiplied. I'm going to do the opposite or the inverse, which means divide it by 7.5. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7.5. When I divide by a decimal, I need to remember, I move the decimal here, I have to move the decimal here. So now I'm dividing 75 into 375. And that will go 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry 2, yep, 37 times. So my final answer is going to be 5 is equal to h, but I want to make sure I'm including the units here. So this is actually 5 meters. All right, so hopefully that helps you with finding the area of a triangle. Just remember the 1/2 part, base times height. And when we start mixing up all our shapes, you'll have several formulas to choose from. So it's important to identify the shape first, and then you can pick the right formula to go with it. All right, thank you.